I'm Benji and I'm an alcoholic. My home group is Shepard of the Hills, and my sobriety date is March 3rd of 2018. And just to clarify a couple of things, Bobby gave me this book of Comes of Age, but he also tells me, hey, you got to read this book because we're going to Indiana, and for some reason I thought this Indiana trip was about Comes of Age, so I had to be up to date on some shit, you know. And then there was a story that he was leading up to about I'm at an apartment with other people, and this is this guy's apartment, and he had been gone for a couple of days. I had been drunk for a few weeks, and he walks in the door and says, I think I'm going back to the program. I said, you probably need to, you know. And he did, and we did, and we still talk today. And so let's start from the beginning. So I am from the Boot Heel of Missouri. If you don't know where that's at, it's on the opposite side of the state. I'm from a small town, New Madrid, Missouri. Not very big. My life growing up when I was young, my father, I would describe him as a heavy drinker. He was a weekend warrior. Him and my mom would go out and drink and dance on the weekends, you know. There wasn't any crazy fights in my house. My dad wasn't coming home at all hours of the night. He wasn't beating me or my sisters. I'm the middle child. I have a half sister, which is we have the same dad. This will get complicated in a bit, folks. My wife's over there shaking her head right now. We have the same mom. We have the same dad, but we don't have the same mom. And I got a younger sister, which I grew up with all the time. She's a year younger than me, and we have the same mom and dad. That'll get complicated in a few, I promise. And so our life was normal, you know, and alcohol was not a bad thing growing up. To me, most of my relatives that were of age drank. My mom didn't hardly drink at all. My dad's side of the family, if there was a get-together, they were drinking. But it just wasn't crazy. It wasn't, it just wasn't a crazy thing. So I grow up and get older. I'm 13 at this time. And it's my mom, my dad, my younger sister Becky, and me, and then my other sister lives with her mom, comes on the weekends, and and we would taste Dad's beer, you know what I mean. I remember being 13 years old, 12 maybe, driving on dirt roads with my dad, little ponies of Bush beer when they were really small and round like this, and just Dad would let us have a pony beer, and I didn't really like the taste of beer that much. I wasn't getting drunk then. And then we get a little older, and if we were camping or something, Dad would let us drink wine coolers back when wine coolers were a thing. But I wasn't getting blackout drinking or anything like that. And so time goes on, and I get to be about 15. I've got an uncle that's my mom's youngest brother. He's like 3 years older than me, and he. So when I'm 15, he's like 17 or 18, and I hang out with him and his buddies. I'm the little kind of kid running around, and they drink, so I'm drinking with these guys. And then alcohol's starting to be, I'm starting to get consequences from my parents. I'm coming home drunk, and they're threatening to do this and that, and it wouldn't stop me, I would still do this or that, and then I get 16, and it might sound, some of you probably will relate to this. What we did where I'm from is we got beer and we went out to the levee. That's what we did. We didn't do anything else. We rode around town and drank beer, and we went out to the levee. That's what we did. If you didn't do that, you wasn't cool, And so we did that, and that's that was my weekends consisted of. But it was weird. So So I wasn't one of the cool guys in school, or I wasn't I'm judging people all the time, And but on the weekends, drinking, I was with the cool people, right? And it would be, rubbing. You were all da. Come Monday morning, I could not look these same people in the eye. I was that shy, that afraid of the world. I could not. And then come the next weekend, and then at Monday morning, I could not say hi inside of the hallway. And it was just, now that I think about that, that was so weird. I was just so shy. And so I get, 16, I get my license. It's probably, I'm about to turn 17. This is the first time I'm ever going to get pulled over by the police. I have a little Ford Ranger. I'm with my buddy. And the lights go on. Never been pulled over in my life. I gun it. I'm outrunning the cops.
Oh, no.
I'm drunk, right? And it was a Thursday night. We didn't have school the next morning. I finally pull off on a field road. I jump. We have big ditches there. We're a farming place. Jump down in the ditch. The cops they know where I'm at, They're just not going to crawl down and get me. So they stand out there about 45 minutes. I've got a little Indiglo watch, that Iron Man with Timex, and I'm looking like this because I got to be home at midnight. These guys are going to leave. So finally I come out, I get arrested, I go to jail. I'm 16 years old. My poor mother comes up to the jail, gets me out of jail because they've never dealt with this. Never in their life. Most of my family does not go to jail. So I go to jail. My mom comes and gets me out. I'm from a small place. I got this court date. So my grandmother has already called the judge before we ever get some night court shit. The judge isn't even a judge. He's what he really. He's just an appointed guy. My grandmother has already set it up to where they're not going to charge me with a DWI. They're going to make me pay this fine. They're not going to send it to the state. Or none. Before I ever get there, it's just a little slap on the hand, la 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 la. I come back home. They even mail me my fine money back a few months later, so nothing happens, and no consequences except for my parents, and so no real consequences. And then I continue to drink like this, and I'm doing okay in school. I was always intelligent enough to where I could make it through school pretty easy. Drinking become more and more. I had a job at a restaurant from like 16 to when I graduated, and most people there, everybody except my younger sister that I worked with there, we were all in high school together. We were all in the same grade. I knew most of these girls. I knew them since kindergarten. We would all party with our friends and stuff. And I remember one night, I'm about 17, and there's one girl I knew since we was in kindergarten, and she said, and we drank a lot alike. When me and her drank, we drank, you know what I mean? I knew I was different. I knew I drank different than my friends. I knew it was doing something different for me than it was doing for other people for a long time. And I remember one night she said, you know what? I just wish I could just drink all the time. And I'm like, yes, me too. Because that's what I wanted to do. At an early age, it never made sense to me. If I could drink and feel like this, why the hell would I want to feel like this over here? And so I spent the next 25, 30 years trying to feel like that. And a lot of my story is a lot of DWIs, and I'll make it quicker. I got to get sober at some point. In 2000, so I graduated high school. After I graduated high school, before I graduated, I signed up for the United States Navy. I leave for boot camp, go to the Navy. 2 weeks into boot camp, I have a hole in my eardrum from the plane ride there. They send me back home. I've got plans to go back, but I don't have to. I go back home, do the same. My mom was so happy that I was getting out of New Madrid County, Missouri, right? Because if your mom loves you like she does mine, it was it was all my friends' fault, and it was where I was from fault, So she was happy I was getting out of there. And I come home, and I'm doing the same thing, you know what I mean? And I wound up getting a job, and And a lot of DWIs happened in between there. We're talking like 6 within a probably a 3 or 4 year period. You're saying this guy should have been like, it was different, 25 years ago. And none of them were felonies back then. It was just a city deal. It was different back then. They didn't go to the state. And so in 2003, I meet this girl, and she's in California, or going to California, and I had done broke up with this other girl, and I'm going to change my life. I'm going to Los Angeles, California. So I get on a plane with nothing but clothes and move to California, and at this time I'm probably 26, and I get to California, and I'm only meaning to stay for 2 weeks, right? I stay in California for a year, and then we moved to Utah, and I'm in Utah for about 6 years, right? And I'm doing the same thing. My alcoholism at this point was really catching up with me. I forgot to mention earlier, on my second DWI that I got, I was 19 years old. I did lose my driver's license. Was the first time I'd ever went to treatment, because I thought I was going to go to jail for a DWI. It was the first time I was ever introduced, ever heard of anything of Alcoholics Anonymous. Was in this treatment center. I get out of this treatment center. It was 2 weeks back then. I get out of there on a Monday. I'm drinking by Wednesday. I actually go to court. I didn't know I had court one day. My dad calls me at night. I didn't even tell you about the other part. But anyway, my dad calls me one night and says, "Hey, we got court in the morning." And I'm loaded drunk. I go to court. I'm still half drunk, and I get some probation and stuff out of that. But before we moved to California, let's back up a little bit. So when I'm 19, right before I get out of high school, my mother gets diagnosed with lung cancer, and we'd already lost her dad to it a couple years before this, and so by this time I'm a budding alcoholic, really. And so when I'm 19, I just graduated school. I came back home from getting booted out of boot camp, and my mother dies, right? And so this was if you got a budding young alcoholic, and he's got something like that he can grab onto, boy, and I grabbed onto that for the next probably 15 years. This is why I do this, because of this, this, and this. And during the midst of all of this, I find out that the man that I've been calling my father, and I still call him my father, he's my dad, was not my real dad. My real dad was some guy that my mom was pregnant in high school. My real dad lives in Washington State, right? So this is more fuel to a young budding alcoholic. And this guy didn't know, he didn't know. I met him a couple times. There was never a relationship there. Matter of fact, he died a few years ago. And but this was really fuel for me. This is why I do what I do. And like my grandmother kind of took the role. At this time I'm 19. You don't need a mom, but I needed a mom. You know what I mean? My grandmother kind of took that role. I stayed on and off with her, mostly using her for most of my life. I had a job, but I lived at her house for free, and I drank most of my money up and all of that stuff. And so finally I about burned every bridge in Missouri. So in 2003, I think I said, moved to California. I'm there for a year. I go to Utah. I'm there for like 7 years. And the 7 years in Utah, so in and out of jail. And mostly it was public intoxication in my own house. It's a law there. I was a regular at that jail. They knew me by name. It was just in and out. And I had started going to Alcoholics Anonymous in Utah too, a lot. I've been to hundreds of meetings there over that period. Never was I in Alcoholics Anonymous. Now I know this. I was always around Alcoholics Anonymous there. I never had a sponsor. I didn't know what service was. All I knew was that I would go to meetings, and they, for some reason, some of them were staying sober, and I could not do it. Now, I'm not saying that they weren't telling me about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that's in the book, if they were, I didn't know anything about it, you know. And I did a couple treatments out there in Utah too. So finally, it gets about to the end of that whole relationship and that thing out there in Utah. And I finally, my dad and his, well, he's married now to another lady. I'd called them and I said, man, I gotta come home, da 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 da. So finally, they weren't listening anymore of bullshit. They're like, we got you a plane ticket, da 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 da, right? And at the time, I'm on bail, I'm on bond for one of these bullshit charges that I had out there, right? So I let this chick tell me, hey, I'll give you a ride to the airport. Cool, right? Well, we get about halfway to Salt Lake. We pull into a gas station. The bounty hunters jump out and get me over $1,000, drag me back down here to this jail to spend like 90 days. I get out of there and finally I do get the plane ticket. I come back to Missouri in 2010. And it was weird because I had been gone for a while. So my little nieces and nephews that were young then, now they're up here. And I felt really like I was so distant from my family. I feel, you know, most of the time you guys are my family. Even my family there, I feel so distant because I had been gone for so long and doing my own thing. It's a lot of drinking. And so I come back home. I'm staying at my dad's for a couple of weeks. I wound up moving to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, with an ex, and I'm there. I'm in Missouri for I get here in like May. In November, now I don't have a driver's license in either this time. I lost when I'm 19. At this time, I'm probably 35-ish, and so I used to come drive from Cape. It's like an hour to where I'm from, and get my dad's truck to drive because I had to work every other weekend at this job, and I couldn't use their car. And anyway, so I drive down there and get my dad's truck, use it for the weekend, and take it back. Well, it was right before Thanksgiving in 2010. We're doing that, but so I'm wanting to leave before her so that I can stop and get my vodka and stuff because I'm drinking, right? And I'd had a few before, so I'm on the interstate, on I-55 going south, and a cop passes me, right? And then turns his lights on. I'm like, that's weird, but no, he's pulling me over, right? and anyway, along you know, he doesn't even do a field sobriety test. He can tell her that I'm drunk, right? And and I'm thinking it's not a big deal. I haven't been in trouble really for anything in the state of Missouri, especially driving, in 10 years, right? And he says, Mr. Jolly, this is a felony. And I just start laughing. How can you go from over here misdemeanor to now this is a felony, right? 10 years later, don't this shit drop off? So he continues to explain to me now, since I guess there was a law passed in 2008 that in the state of Missouri, now they can bring every one of these DWI charges from 10 years ago plus this one. So Mr. Jolly, this is your 8th DWI in the state of Missouri. This will be a Class A felony, right? And I'm like, whoa, this is getting real serious now, you know. And so I hire an attorney and all of this stuff. And man, Mike says it's best. I can do jail, but I'm not a prison guy, right? Mike says it good. And so now I'm looking at really doing some real time, man. And I get this, I hire a lawyer. And this drags on for a little bit. This is 2000 and beginning of 2011 now, and I have a paid lawyer, and he wasn't cheap, right? So it all gets down to the deal, and they finally get it down to where they'll charge me with the Class C felony, you know, and they're even going to offer me this 120-day treatment in prison, or they're going to offer me 3 years, right? And this paid lawyer comes up to me after that deal and he says, Benji, you better take the 3 years because you will never, when you get on 120s, you come out on 5 years paper with a backup. He says, Benji, there's no way you're ever going to be able to do 5 years paper. Right? I'd go to his office, you know, try to play like, but I was drinking. He says, you'll never be able to do it. He begged me not to take this, because you do 3 years, you're gonna go do freaking, 8, 9 months. You'll be out, you've been walking down, all of that stuff. But I take the 120. Like, I can do math, and so I take the 120, man, and that was in May of 2011. I get out in September. I go back to Cape Girardeau, and I can't stop drinking. I didn't know I couldn't stop. I thought I didn't, I thought I was choosing all of this stuff, and by this time I've got a probation officer. I got a 7-year backup, and every time I turn around, I'm drinking, and he knows, because back about that time, the state of Missouri got real smart. They got these tests now. I'm sure it's better now. This was freaking 15 years ago, that they can do some white cell. They used to contest for alcohol. You know what I mean? So this was my 4th time on probation for DWI in the state of Missouri, and now they can see urine through your urine alcohol from like 3 or 4 days back or whatever. So my gig's up. So I really got smart about throughout this year. So I would go to the PO just like I was supposed to. I would pee. And I knew I had about a week, because they had to send this off to a lab back then. So I would just call from those Stapleton or the rehab, you know what I mean? Hey, I'm in rehab, you know what I mean? Well, you better be. So this goes on and on and on for a solid year. Now, when I was in doing the 120 in prison, I can't believe I remember this guy's name. There was a guy named Justin Brooks. He had just got out of the main line of a main prison. He was doing there in 84 and out or something. And I remember him telling me something about Church Army in Branson, Missouri. I'd never been to Branson in my entire life, never been to Springfield, any of that. And I remember telling him about Church Army, right? And so I was running out this whole PO and calling it from rehab stuff, or him. It was about to run its course, and I'm still looking down the barrel of they wasn't doing good time back then yet, and I'm looking at 7 years, and man, I didn't want to quit drinking. I'll be honest with you, I did not want to quit drinking. I wanted people to quit. I was literally convinced that if people would let me drink like I wanted to drink, that everything would be okay. They were the problem. So I run out of this deal, man, and it's getting pretty heavy on me. So I mentioned I'm in a treatment one more time after about a year after getting out, and I remember talking to the PO. I was like, I'm just going to go to this place called Church Army. You know what I mean? Never researched it, right? So she said, so she calls and sets it all up. And 2 weeks later, in August of 2012, I'm in Branson, Missouri, at a long-term treatment. It was Church Army. Most of you know it nowadays as CORE. And I go to Church Army now in 2012, and I told you before I'd been to hundreds of AA meetings before this, if not 200 or 300 AA meetings, and I never knew that there was a program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Never knew this. So I get there, and it was my first introduction to the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm there, for I'm there for about 3 months, and I skip out and I go get drunk, right? And then I come back and I'm there for a year and a half, do all the commencing and all that stuff. By this time it's changed to CORE. I go back home after a year and a half, do a couple of meetings. Within 2 weeks, I'm drunk, right? And so I repeat this cycle with going back home and coming back to Branson from 2012 until 2018, probably 7 times. The same cycle. Sometimes I would stay 6 months. By this time I'm off. I finally got off my probation and everything in 2014. I just repeated that cycle over and over again. I would try to go back home, and I was pretty good. You put me in a program like that, and I've been pretty good until I'm not. You know what I mean? I'm one of those guys that I drink until I have to stop, and then I stop until I have to drink. That was my entire life, and so in 2017 I'd been in Corps for 11 months. I lost my license when I was 19. In about November of 2017, because I was on a 10-year denial after all this stuff in 2011. The state of Missouri, after me calling them a bunch of times, finally are going to give me a hardship license. I can only get a hardship because my 10-year denial is not up. So I go through all of the hoops to get a hardship license. That happens in 2017 in November. I get all of that. So, and I'm only supposed to be driving to work and all of that stuff, but nobody knows, you know what I mean? And so I get that, and so I'm going to go home for Christmas, right? I got big plans, right? So I'm going back to the Boot Hill at Christmas. So about 2 days before Christmas, I drive to the Boot Hill. Everything's okay, I am not really thinking about drinking, right? And Christmas Eve, I was supposed to meet up with an ex, right? And so things don't go Benji's way, right? And so none of this was planned, right? But before I knew it, and I have a breathalyzer on my truck at this time also. And before I knew it, I had a pint of vodka in my hand, and I was headed to my dad's because I can't drink it and drive this truck, And I'm just going to drink this vodka, knock the edge off, and then I'm going to figure it all out, right? So the next morning, I get up. It's probably a couple hours later, and I try to blow in this truck, right? And it won't let me go nowhere, right? And so I remember everybody was like, well, what are you doing? So finally, I get the bright idea so Poplar Bluff is about halfway in between the Boot Hill where I'm from and here, maybe a little less. And so I get the bright idea that I'm going to sober up, drive to Poplar Bluff, get drunk for a couple days, come back to Corps like nothing ever happened, right? Except I don't drink like that. I do leave the Boot Hill, get to Poplar Bluff, and I drink like Benji drinks. I spend about a week in some cheap hotel until I run out of money. My aunt and my uncle had found me somehow in this hotel. She lives in Poplar Bluff. I go back to the Boot Hill. This was in January of 2018. I do not draw another sober breath until about March of 2018. Maybe by the end of February 2018. I'm staying at my uncle's camper. I'm drinking whatever he has and whatever you have. And it was a rough time. And finally, I've never been a guy that wakes up. Not one time in my entire life have I ever woke up after being drunk and said, "That's enough. I'm quitting." I'm not that guy. It's never one time happened to me in my life. I'm either locked up, I cannot get my hands on alcohol, or I am broke. Right? That's the only time I have to be. There's got to be something happen that separates me from alcohol. I'm not a guy that's just going to say, I don't want no more. It's never happened once in my life. Finally, my sister comes down there, my older sister, hadn't seen her in a while, comes down there, and she pierced something in me to where I had freaking decided, you know what, I'll go to this rehab that you guys want me to go to. So I go to the rehab. They're going to breathalyze you at the rehab, right? And I'll tell you, I didn't draw a sober breath for at least 2.5 months. And they breathalyze me, and it's like a 0.4, right? You're supposed to be not walking. And they look at me, and my sister and my uncle are like, this guy's just getting started. You know what I mean? And so they won't take me. So I got to go to the hospital and chill out there. And then and then I'm going to go to rehab, right? And so I sat in the hospital all night, and you can't even get out of your bed and shit. Can't smoke or anything, right? It's one of them freaking alarms when you get up, right? And so if you're an alcoholic of my type, I start sobering up a bit, and I'm not going to no fucking rehab, Jack. It ain't happening. It ain't happening. My sister comes and picks me up, and I'm not going to rehab. It is not happening. I played that game way too many times. But I will, because the only time that I ever could gain any traction in my life, and I was sober by this time my sister came and got me, I will go back to Branson, right? I will do this. So she takes me to my dad's house, right? These people love me to death, had gotten tired of my shit. They never shut their garage door. The garage door hadn't been shut in 15 fucking years. I go to their house, the fucking garage door is shut, they won't answer the door. Will not answer the door, right? My sister's like, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. So I had one more people. I had some kind of long distance relatives that lived over in the next town. They wouldn't let me stay, right? And somehow, some way, this could only be a God thing or something. They weren't drinking that night, and they got tired of my shit too. If they did have alcohol there, it was hidden. I promise you. Didn't drink there. I finally get hold of my dad's wife the next day. She comes and picks me up. And at this time, man, I have ran out of options. So I call. This is significant later on, but I call. By this time, if you've been to Corps and Church Army 7 or 8 times, you know everybody in Corps and Church Army, right? They know you pretty well. And so I call, and the first guy, that's the admittance guy, he says, Benji, I can't even talk to you. I can't tell you yes or no, right? So the head guy gets on there, and he says, or the second to the head guy gets on there, and he says, Benji, you can come back, but I don't think we have what you need. But you can come back. You've always done great, never caused a problem. But I don't think we have what can help you, right? And that kind of stuck with me. I was like, God, what the fuck is he saying? You know what I mean? You've always helped me. I didn't drink. So I come back over to Branson in 2018, and I come back over here, and man, I'm going to do the same thing I've always done. I was laying carpet at this time, right? I had no other ideals because I didn't know anything else. I come to Branson. They tell me everything I can and cannot do. I'm pretty good at that. And I go make money over here, and I put it over here until Benji gets ready to drink. You know, and I don't plan this. This is what just happens, right? And so this time, I didn't plan on doing anything different. Because in my mind, doing what I had been doing for 6 years, in and out of there, worked. But I forgot that it worked until it didn't work, right? So I thought this whole thing was about me not drinking, right? And so by this time, I remember this. There was this guy. This is when it clicked in my mind that something had to change. At this time, I had begun to talk to Stacy, my wife. That is my wife today. We had started secretly talking, you know. And so, but there was a guy, and he was from somewhere over by Fulton, and he had just came into the program. Now, I had been around this book now because I'd been in Corps and around the program in here, you know, listening to shit and spouting off smart shit out of the book. And so these guys that were new would catch on to that. This guy must know some shit because he knows what's on page 78 of the big book. Because I would do that shit because I wanted to be cool and I wanted you to think. My whole life's been a mask to you people, right? And so this one kid says, hey, can you show me what it means? On page 63, I think it's 63, I might be 43, but it's talking about the third step and the requirements and stuff. And I said, well, sure I can, right? So I'm about to tell this guy what I think this says, right? And we're sitting at the table at the Raven House. Some of you know where that's at. We're sitting at the table, and this guy, it dawns on me at this moment that I had never done what this book had said. I had never done what this book had said. I'd been there for 6 years. telling you that I had done what this book had said, and therefore I had gotten no results, right? So without me saying, yes, I'll do it, man, God took me on a journey. So me and this guy go through this thing, right? And I stay in court for a few more months. And me and Stacy are getting pretty secretly serious at this time, you know. And we decide that it's going to be a great thing for us to move out, right? And my boss had a trailer, and he was trying to get me to move in, son of a bitch, right? It was just empty, right? And it was a good deal and all that. And she had a job, and I had a job. And before this move out happened, I had started going to a lot of meetings while I was there, because they would let me drive at this time again. I would start going to meetings at the train station in Hollister on Saturdays. That was about the only time I could go to meetings. And I started meeting people over there. And I met a man over there, Charlie. Most of you probably know my old sponsor, Charlie. And I met him. And I told this other guy that was also in court, I said, I'm going to ask this Charlie guy to be my sponsor, right? And I just told him that. Well, I had done forgot it because I wasn't really going to do it. It sounded good when I said it, right? Well, we pull up one night, and Scott says, hey, Charlie's here. Wasn't you going to ask him to be your sponsor? And I was like, oh, I guess I got to. So I walked in there, and I did it. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, to go ask another man this question. And so me and Stacy move out, and I'm at a meeting every night, right? Right here in this room. And I remember I had been sober for 8 months, and I did not come to Alcoholics Anonymous to get sober. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous because I knew without a doubt I was going to drink again. That's all I'd ever done my entire life. I'd been in these rooms most of my adult life, and all I'd ever done was drink. I had been 8 months sober. So I come in here, and I don't remember making a conscious decision that I'm going to do what these people are doing. But I remember having this little moment a few months earlier that, and by this time me and Charlie are communicating, and we're starting to do a little bit of step work, and I come in here, and I was just telling Joseph this earlier. I came in here, and any defense to tell you that I knew what I was doing and I got this somehow was stripped away from me. Thank God that there was still, and I say this at a lot of meetings, and it means a lot. Thank God that there were some guys in Alcoholics Anonymous in probably September, October of 2018 that was doing Alcoholics Anonymous, man. Thank God there were some guys doing Alcoholics Anonymous. Mike was here. Bobby was here. There was people that are not hitting this group anymore. These guys were here, and they were doing Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was talking to a guy earlier. Throughout this time, Charlie was my sponsor. Maybe then once a week, we went through the steps. And I remember getting to the 4th step, and I had always done it with these sheets, right? You know, that's how we'd done it. And I'm like, Charlie, I need these sheets. And he said, Benji, and I did not. If I did know it, I didn't know it. He said, Benji, it's all in the big book, right? And there was no sheets. I did that, and I was finally 100% honest with another man. I had done a few 4 steps before in my life, and so everything's rocking along. Me and Stacy are together. I'm at a meeting just about every single night when we were first together. And then, and like I said, and Bobby's my sponsor now. Mine and Charlie's schedules kind of conflicted a few years ago. And Bobby is probably one of the biggest reasons I'm standing up here today, right? These guys weren't telling me, Charlie wasn't telling me, Benji, go to a meeting every night and you'll stay sober. Charlie did not say that shit, you know what I mean? Charlie or Bobby, neither one, are meeting-based sobriety guys. They're just not. And you know what the crazy thing about it? They go to meetings all the time, you know what I mean? It's amazing how that shit works, you know? And so these guys, man, even though they're so different, in a lot of ways, they both were armed with facts about themselves. They were armed with facts about themselves. I would sit with Charlie after we'd went through the steps and stuff. And I forgot to say this earlier. I have always been somewhat sponsorable in Alcoholics Anonymous, you know. And Charlie taught me early on after I had got through the steps with Charlie. It was weird how he done this stuff, and I still don't know. So I would meet with him just about once a week. Sometimes it'd be every 2 weeks. But I would go to Charlie, and it was usually an hour. I'd go to his house, and I would go to Charlie with problems in my life. Usually they were work related, or at this time they were relationship problems, you know what I mean? And we were young. I was young, and we'd gotten married, and I wasn't young, but we were young in love, you know. And but the crazy thing about it, Charlie would not dwell upon that. Charlie would always spin the thing. Benji, what are you doing with the guys you were sponsoring? What are you doing with the guys that you were sponsoring? Somehow, some way, Charlie knew that this program was not about Benji Jolly. He knew this, and it was just crazy. So he'd always spin it around. At this time, I was sponsoring a guy, and it was always about what are you doing over here, right, with this guy. And now I have Bobby. And we've been together, and Bobby's been a part of this whole thing. Bobby, early on this thing, Bobby was dragging me along. I wasn't here very long, and somehow I wound up being alternate freaking GSR, and I was in AA for like 6 months, and all of a sudden the GSR goes and drives the truck, and now I'm the GSR, and they would just say, we're going to Sedalia tomorrow. Stacy, I gotta go to Sedalia tomorrow, and we bet Sedalia for the weekend, and doing the area thing and things like that. And Bobby's drugged me to Indiana on that other one thing early on in sobriety. And man, these guys. And I was telling Joseph this earlier. You know, sometimes I'll say this at meetings. A lot of times I'll say Bobby said or Charlie said, and they may not have said that, but that's what the hell I heard, you know what I mean? So early on in this thing, I heard Charlie say, Benji, if you want to stay in Alcoholics Anonymous, you got to have a job inside of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I've always done that. I've always had a job inside of my home group since I came here, and I really didn't understand why he wanted to do all that stuff. But man, he pushed me into this thing, and once I got in here, because me and Charlie never had the same home groups. Man, Bobby was the guy in this room. You know what I mean? He walked me through this thing, and even before he was my sponsor, me and Bobby used to sit at his table when he lived out there by Table Rock, just hashing shit out, and it was beautiful. And used to have meetings out there with other things, and so these guys, man, I owe so much to those guys because, and I always thank God they just didn't say, go to more meetings, Benji. You know, these guys knew this and knew the book and knew how to live, and they always had. Their answers were not always what I want. Their answers were always outside of me. And Bobby still is today. Bobby is, Charlie was the, what is going on over here? Bobby's the guy, man. Let's do some inventory, you know. It's inventory all the time because he knows the problems inside of Benji. He always knows the problems inside of me, and he knows I know the problem. I just got to regurgitate it out and talk like a mirror to him. And so that's things. And where else am I going with this? I do have one other thing to say. Yeah, and Joseph was asking earlier, we were talking, and I had a thought the other day, like what have I done differently than other people that I've been around with in Alcoholics Anonymous? Because obviously a lot of the people that I came in with or that were here, they're not here now, you know. And you know what, I'd like to say that I've been consistent in this thing. I've been consistent in Alcoholics Anonymous, man. You know, and sometimes that that interferes with my personal life, with my marriage sometimes. You know, it really does. I was just telling Joseph the other day, I almost cried when I talk about my marriage, but when an AA calls, I got to answer. I do not think that I have the ability to say no. When the phone rings and it's Alcoholics Anonymous, I think it's my duty to answer that son of a bitch. And I try to answer it every single time. I really do. And I'm not perfect at this thing by any means. And I do other things too. You know what I mean? This is the big book tells us to search out other things, you know, as far as a God thing, and I do that. And man, and I did meet with a group of guys right on my couch every Wednesday. You know what I mean? That's kind of fading to the side, you know. I've got a couple of guys now. I'm about to rope them back on my couch, you know, and they just don't know it yet. And these guys, like Bobby was talking about earlier, he thinks, these guys sponsor. I'm telling you, these guys sponsor me, you know. I wasn't real good for a long time about doing, I'm one of those guys that I'm either doing Alcoholics Anonymous or I'm not, right? I'm either doing it or I'm not. So I'm not real good about doing inventory at night. I'm just not good. So this is what I try. I got a few sponsees, and we do an inventory, write it down, and we got to send a picture to each other, right? And that makes me. I don't do that shit for them. I do it because that makes me do an inventory, right? Me and Joseph were just talking about earlier about meditation. I'm great Monday through Friday because I get up at 5:30, go to work, sitting in the office. Stacy knows where I'm at 6:15, and she's at home. She's in the office. And but come tomorrow, I don't got to be at work at the same time, or Sunday. I have to physically talk myself in there to go in there and talk to the God that I will tell you on Monday is running my life. You know what I mean? And I believe that's why the third step tells me that, man, I'm trying to relieve myself through God, the bondage of self, because I'm still tied to Benji, man, and most of the time, Benji wins. You know what I mean? Most of the time, sadly, Benji wins. And I think that's all I got. I remember the first time I told Ruth, I said, I was scared to death the first time 5 years ago. I said, shit, I could have went on about 30 more minutes, you know. But I am done. And thank you guys, everyone that came, man. And I hope something I said you heard.